a little bit of definitions just about those three particular diseases, because they're often sort of mixed up in this confusion that a physician may have when they're trying to diagnose the disease. Again, typical HUS, it is common. It is the most common form of the HUSs, and it counts for about 90% of those cases. And you know, those of you who live in farming communities probably know there's an outbreak every so often. Though you know, we don't have any German families here, of course, today, but the German people obviously know this disease very well. This is what caused this huge outbreak in Germany just recently. So, but I think. Classically in children, we like to say that this is a self-limiting disease. So this disease will come, it will run its course. The children may end up in the end with a small degree of kidney dysfunction or maybe some high blood pressure. But as you in this room know, those are small problems compared to what children with atypical HUS or adults with atypical HUS can face. Then the other entity, thrombocytopenia purpura, is, frankly, it's an abnormality of this particular protein called ADAMTS-13. And I'm going to give you a pictorial of this, but the bottom line is that protein doesn't function, so you get the same hematologic parameters that we talked about with atypical HUS. Also a very rare disease, probably occurs more in adults than it does in children, so it may be a little bit of the adverse to what we're dealing with atypical HUS. And then finally, we get to atypical HUS. It accounts for about 10% of all those HUS cases. There is generally no evidence of obvious infection, though, as many of you will say, is that, you know, there's maybe a prodrome of some kind, a little bit of fatigue, a little bit of flu-type symptoms, but often you can't put a finger on infection, but particularly you shouldn't be able to put a finger on the infection that usually causes the typical form of HUS. But I will admit, quite frankly, even these boundaries are being blurred very, very much in recent months. Lost my screen. So, and in fact, we classically say that atypical HUS is not associated with diarrhea, but I will tell you that there are clearly identified cases where children have had their first episode of atypical HUS in a setting where they've had a diarrheal illness. So here's my schematic that I've tried to draw for you. So on this side, we have the typical HUS form. And the bottom line here really is you have this toxin that is taken in by mouth, and it damages the endothelium. Pretend this is a blood vessel. You damage the endothelium. You get this clump of platelets. It's as simple as that. Clump of platelets means you're going to have trouble with blood flow. These red cells that should be able to just race by end up being broken up in small pieces. Hence, you get the schistocytes. So that's in typical HUS. In TTP, on the other hand, I mentioned to you these very long von Willebrand factor multimers, we call them. They don't get broken up like they're supposed to. So they are hanging in the blood vessel inappropriately, if you will, and they're beginning to snag these platelets. And again, red cells that should just be sliding right through there are now being chopped up by the platelets and by this conglomeration of abnormal protein. And then finally, we have the form of atypical HUS, which I won't spend a lot of time going through. I have depicted so that you can see that there obviously are lots of complement components here. You do eventually get the endothelia or the blood vessel rupture or damage, if you will. And then again, same concept. You get a group of platelets being collected. Blood that is trying to flow through that blood vessel is then inhibited, or is certainly it's damaged when it's trying to go through, and you get the same picture. You get schistocytes. So you can see, again, it's a very similar process happening in all three diseases with respect to what's happening to the blood, whether you're getting clot formation, whether you're damaging red blood cells.